from Sticky Paws Studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, it's The Big O Show.
Hi, Odie Carmona, The Big O Show out of Las Vegas. Today we have an incredible guest for me, is a candidate for the President of the United States, and that is Jason Palmer. He brings over 25 years of experience in the business, technology startups, Bill Gates Foundation, and I'm just so excited to have you on, and thank you so much for agreeing to be on.
Hey, Odie, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No problem. That's we want to learn as much as we can about all the candidates so we can make a smart vote. So we know exactly who's running and what works best for us, you know? Again, I'm so excited that I'm kind of getting confused here. What questions do I ask you first? But one of them is, can you share a bit about your personal journey and motivations for public service?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it really dates back to, like you, I grew up in an education family. My dad was a teacher who became a principal and a superintendent. And during that time, that's when I first kind of got politically energized. I cast my first vote for Bill Clinton when I went to the University of Virginia. University of Virginia is steeped in traditions from Thomas Jefferson and the founding fathers, as you know. And during that time, I had the honor of working as an aide for Senator Moynihan of New York, who was actually known for his bipartisan activities, his focus on poverty, his focus on improving people's lives. And that really, made me politically aware, politically engaged from that time. But I've been an entrepreneur and an investor in entrepreneurs for most of my life. And I wasn't sure if I would ever get involved with politics other than being a donor to campaigns and a helpful person to a number of people who've run for office. But this past year, I kept waiting for, maybe Governor Newsom to get in the race or maybe Governor Whitmer to get in the race. And nobody was getting in the race to offer a younger alternative to President Biden, who's been a great public servant for the last 50 years. But the idea was that he would be a transitional figure and that we would pass the torch to a younger generation of Americans. So I started asking my CEOs, I've invested in about 20 companies over the last decade, if I ran for president, would you vote for me? And they all said, yes, absolutely. And then I started, expanding the circle outward to more people who know about my political engagement as a donor and as a person who has very deep understanding of political issues and advise a lot of people on my thoughts, but have never stepped out into the public arena like this. And enough people encouraged me to go for it that I said, you know what, at a minimum, I'm going to be a positive, optimistic voice for how entrepreneurs can make this country better. And if I'm lucky, maybe even more than that.
You touch on a point that I always harp on is entrepreneurship. Here in Las Vegas, our local boards, our College of Southern Nevada, and UNLV, our higher ed, have all concentrated on entrepreneurship programs, entrepreneurship hubs. And, we just, our Senator Edgar Flores passed the bill on the street vendors for the food trucks. All those are entrepreneurs, and I'd love to hear the fact that you are looking at the younger vote. Mind you, I'm a lot older than you, but my daughter's generation, for instance, that spirit of entrepreneurship is a beautiful thing to bring, and to bring back America, that small business mindset that, yes, we can do this, and yes, you can start and build a future.
Completely. And I would say that young entrepreneurs are really the people I spend the most time with. And they, I asked a number of them, would you think about going into public service? What would it take? It's an honorable calling. And they all said that to them, the government just seems so dysfunctional and broken that they couldn't imagine getting into public service. So a big part of why I'm running is to give them a voice and to show them that they too can get involved with public service and that you can come from a career in entrepreneurship and make that step over the divide into doing public service. We got to bring back the honor in public service again.
You brought up a word, honor, respect. Unfortunately, politics have gotten a little bit uglier than normal. And the young people, and I say the young people, I'm meaning the millennials, the Gen Zs, that's the generation that was brought up with technology. That's the generation that doesn't have a problem working from home. And those are the things that they see that normal government doesn't offer. Government is very strict. And, these millennials have a mind that they work on their own type of thing. So the opportunity to say, yes, I want to run for public office, but do I really want to deal with all these other issues? So the fact that you've worked with so many brings up a point of collaborative effort. How do you see yourself working once you get elected with everyone up on the hill the way we are so separated at this time?
Yeah, I think there are multiple things to mention here. So the first is that I would actually choose to have a number of people in my cabinet who also come from the world of entrepreneurship and business. Now, I'm smart enough to know you don't want it to be all business people. You need to have a large number, probably two-thirds of them, be people who were known as change makers, people who were moving the ball forward in government beforehand. And then about a third of them be people like myself who had some experience. Like I worked for Moynihan. I also served on the Smithsonian board. I worked at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that had a lot of interaction with public policy. But you need people who are business oriented, but understand public policy and understand the way that the federal government works. Now, going beyond that, the second half of your question was about young people. That I think that there's a lot more that can be done, young people, and also bridging the divide. Like I've hosted over the past few years 40 dinners where I've gotten together people from different sides of a particular issue. Sometimes it's one of them that stands out is when I got together a number of foundations and scientific leaders to talk about how we can get it so that more students are able to learn reading in elementary school. The sad fact of our world right now in America is that only 54% of Americans can read at a sixth grade level or above. And this is a huge issue for our country. People need to be able to read and understand at a 12th grade level in order for us to have a functioning democracy. How can we solve this? And over the course of 2 hours through that conversation, that dinner, I was able to catalyze a set of conversations that led to more than $50 million being invested in the science of literacy through multiple foundations. I've also been asked by organizations to run these dinners to solve disputes, to prevent lawsuits. And I would bring to the White House this idea, which is called a Jeffersonian dinner, where we would bring in legislators on both sides. We probably would televise it. It actually might become like some of the best reality TV you could see, where people would actually brainstorm, collaborate, and come up with new legislation to solve the biggest problems of our day, whether they be climate change, immigration, gun violence reduction. Right now, all this stuff happens behind closed doors. Nobody knows what the heck is going on. And I would bring the problem solvers into the room and have them problem solve in front of the American people.
That sounds wonderful. That way we get to see exactly what the discussion is. Because as a citizen and as a voter, we don't know until the bill is passed. Well, yeah, we hear about it. There's a conflict here. They're going to change this here. But really and truly, we don't see the ongoing conflicts between both parties on how to do this. Now, you brought up an important point, literacy. Being a Cuban American, I take pride in the fact that I speak good English. I'm a college graduate, my first college graduate in my family. My mom had a fifth grade education. We came from Cuba in 1967, and I tell people there was no press 9 for Spanish. So my mom's saying was, ponte los patines, put your roller skates on and learn English because I need you.
Right.
And I think that COVID really affected our educational system. My husband was a teacher at the time. My daughter, my son-in-law, my brother-in-law, and, they all had difficulty. The number one problem was Wi-Fi. Then they said, then Cox said, we're going to give all students, when you apply, we'll give you all Wi-Fi. Then the next step was, make sure all the students have a laptop or a tablet.
Right.
But then the other issue is, and I'm telling you as a Latina, is a lot of parents don't know how to read English. It's not on them. They're trying to put food on the table. They get their kids to school. They need that extra support, that extra help in the school where, a tutor or something like that. And unfortunately, during COVID, it was all so rambled that it kind of got lost. And I think that's where our kids got so disconnected from school and so behind. How do
Yeah.
you feel, or how do you think we can fix that to bring these kids up to par, to the level where, like you said, they're up to date, and by the time they get into high school, they know how to read and write? And the other thing is they have to look for employment, because if you're not going to go to school, you got to go to work.
Yeah, that is a great question. So there's multiple layers to that. So first, definitely, I want to agree with you that students are almost three-quarters of a year behind because of COVID, and there are more and more research reports that are coming out every day that says that they're about three-quarters of a grade year behind because of COVID. Secondly, you were also asking what can we do to get them kind of up to speed, and there is a great answer on that. It is actually tutoring is a great way. And there is a lot of funding that was provided, almost $100 billion in funding to go to tutoring and after school programs and summer camps, which I have been actually worked with a number of those programs over the years. And schools are, kind of cranking their way through adding these tutoring programs, adding these after school programs, adding these summer camps. But it's not just to teach them the old curriculum. We need to also upgrade our curriculum, which has been done in a number of parts of the country to be more connected to the 21st century, more connected to the world of work. And so the things that students are the most interested in learning about is robotics, AI, technology, also having arts and music back in the curriculum. Like these are actually, those are connected to careers too. There are lots of careers in the visual arts, but it's more related to creating videos and more related to creating sounds and songs, etc. So these are the things that need to be both after school, but then more weaved into the curriculum that haven't been done enough. And part of your question was also about, what do we do to folks that are English as a second language or English language learners? ELL is now the term. And we need to put more investment into that. It's actually better if you know two languages, your brain develops and it allows you to actually become smarter over time if you learn two languages when you're young, but it becomes much more difficult to learn that second language when you're older. And so we need to do more investments in ELL in the early grades and then also for adults as well, so that they can have the greatest chance of getting those jobs, getting to the middle class, et cetera.
You touched on a subject now. My husband did careers for many, and workforce readiness, due to the fact also that for the government, or for the state of Nevada, I did workforce development, youth programs.
Yep.
And so we did STEM conferences. And those kids would love it. They really ate it up on so many things. Also, the other one that podcasting. This studio in Las Vegas, I hope next time you're in Vegas that you would come and visit the studio. They have done an incredible job on creating internships for young people to come through the studio and learn
Great.
what podcast is, learning the cameras, learning how to work the computers, because if they know how to work their phone, they can work just about anything.
Completely. In fact, I was in New Hampshire for the last primary election just a few weeks ago and did a whole TV interview with these two young women who were working for one of the news stations. And then at the end, I said, like, how long have you been at your jobs? I could tell they were very young. And they actually were in their first year of college, but they were actually in charge of doing all the reporting across New Hampshire. And I thought, wow, that's kind of amazing. That's really getting it weaved into the curriculum to the max, where they're actually interning for the station at the same time as they're taking their journalism class.
I was a journalism major. I graduated from Greenspan College of Urban Affairs. Go Rebels!
Yeah.
But you get to that point. The high school is where we need to connect these kids, because in middle school they're still kind of and if we
Right.
don't catch them in that ninth grade, and this has always been my beef, okay?
Yeah.
I started working when I was 14. I grew up in Liberty City, Dade County, Miami, Florida. My first job was at the YMCA. And
Yes.
I got the job, and then I got the work permit. My mom took me, and, we got the work
Yep.
permit.
Yep. Yep.
It makes it difficult for kids to get work permits nowadays, if they don't have a job. So
Yeah.
I've always said in the ninth grade, it should be in the curriculum, a required course, workforce readiness. Okay, learn how to do your resume, learn how to do your interview, your interview, and go learn how to look for a job. So by the time you get into the 10th grade, you can apply for a lot of community centers and that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
those classes, they're electives. And so not everybody, well, I know how to get a job. You know, that sort of attitude at high school.
Yeah, yeah,
But if
yeah.
you mandate it where it's part of your graduation, now we're getting kids not only aware of careers and what they can do and prepare them for what classes to take in high school to get them ready. Now, all kids, as we know, will not go to college, but there's so
Right.
many opportunities out there now for any type of other training. Do you see it that way?
You're preaching to the choir here, definitely.
Okay.
So I was just looking at stats the other day that it used to be that 50% of us would actually have jobs when we were in high school. And for me, it was waiting tables, and I also worked at a grocery store running the cashier. For my friends, it was they were a paper boy or paper girl, or they were a lifeguard. Like they learned the basics of showing up on time, doing good work. Babysitting is a big one as well. But what's happened is it's now gone from 50% of young people now down to 25% actually having jobs. And this can, if we change the mindset on this, and nobody really has talked about this, that there is this other idea out there that we shouldn't have child labor. But when you're 14 years old to 18 years old, there are very important skills to learn. And we're talking about, you were just talking about Wi-Fi in schools. Like the best way to get Wi-Fi in schools is to have a lot of young students who care about technology, like actually set up the Wi-Fi for the school. And you can pay them like a training wage, or they can be interns. And this gives them great skill. And then they provided Wi-Fi for the whole school. Or they could hook up like a robotics lab or an AI lab. So we need to look for more of these 21st century programs and not just give them kind of workforce readiness, but actual jobs
Work.
help accelerate the schools. Yeah,
Yes, WEX. You need work experience. Everyone does.
completely.
We here in Las Vegas, I am proud to say that there's a great program for youth. It's called the Summer Business Institute. It's all through fundraising and then collaborating with community to
Yeah.
get these kids hired in these places, and there's money or funding to pay them. But it's small. We can only carry maybe 200 or 300 students at a time. I would like to see a federal program out of the Department of Labor, and maybe when you get elected, you can talk to them about this, where they actually require the states to have a WEX program for all juniors and seniors that sign up for the program, of course, but with
Yep.
federal funding where we don't have to go begging for dollars to pay the wages for these young people.
Totally. I actually will do some more research on that program, but you're kind of giving me a softball here because one of my major policy ideas is that we need to combine the Department of Education and the Department of Labor together and create
Hallelujah.
a new
Marry them.
Department of Talent that would actually be focused on exactly these things, helping high schoolers get more connected to the world of work, helping students who are in college do more one-year certificate and certification programs where you
Short-term
can
training.
new collar jobs is what I call them. These are kind of the blue collar jobs of our era where you get paid 50 to $200,000 to work with technology. Could be in podcasting, could be in virtual reality, technology, biotech, nanotech. It's across actually all industries.
Yes, I totally. If we ever meet in person, and my friends, I've told them that for years, we need to marry education and workforce because it's
Yes.
all in the same. We got to prepare them in high school for whatever new jobs are available out there and what kind of training do they need. And then
Yeah.
also new companies opening up. They need to find talent. What is it that you need that we
Yeah.
need to put in our system, our
Yeah.
educational system, to prepare them for those positions?
Exactly. And I actually have an idea for how to have a program that would create 5 million apprentices here in the United States as well, where people can get upskilled to these programs. It could be high schoolers, but this could be people who are changing from, one area of work to another, where a particular industry is kind of winding down, like retail comes to mind. There's going to be more and more parts of retail that are automated, just like ATMs made bank tellers go away as a profession. You can see that in a lot of restaurants, it's going to become more automated and there are going to be less of those jobs. Same thing for buying things at the mall. We need to, accept that these changes are coming and figure out ways to get people upskilled to better jobs that combine technology and human interaction together.
Wow, it's so we have a CPK, California Pizza Kitchen in
Okay.
Summerlin. They actually have a robot that brings out the food. And I thought, oh my God, here it comes, you know? The other
Exactly.
one too,
I've seen one of those here in Baltimore area as well. The
yeah.
robot's not perfect though. There needs to be like a chaperone who's
Well,
kind of
yeah,
watching.
the waitress was always there, but she was able to put him in there and it rolled and, kind of,
Yeah,
but
keeps it hot and yeah.
the other point you touch on it, and please let me know if you have another meeting and you have to go because I can talk forever, is
I keep going actually. Keep going.
apprenticeship programs. Now, working for the state and working for adult and dislocated worker, you mentioned apprenticeship programs. Most people don't realize that an apprenticeship program can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be construction because for the most part, people thought of apprenticeship as a plumber, as a construction,
Yep,
whatever,
yep, yep. Or
or
manufacturing is a big one. Yeah.
manufacturing. The other thing that I saw in the news the other day that really surprised me was mining. Mining
Mhm.
has gone down. So
Yes.
those in my field are what we call dislocated workers. These people, they do have skills, but how do we transfer those skills onto the next? And that's where short-term certifications all come in.
Completely. In fact, there's a chart I recently saw, which I can send to you, that in the past year, there are now more certifications and certificates that can get you to a $50,000 a year job being awarded than there are people who are graduating with a bachelor's degree. And if you look at the chart, college degrees are kind of going like this up a
Hmm.
little bit, but the certificates, it's almost a straight up shot because so many of these programs now, whether it's Google Analytics or Salesforce Administrator, or even things working with large machinery where you actually have been certified in using the digital operations to run the pile driver or the backhoe. Like these are all becoming digitized.
Yeah, like logistics. It's a perfect
Logistics
example.
for
Is a
sure. Yeah.
perfect example. The other one too that you mentioned was the retail portion of it. There'll always we will still need humans, but I can see where robotics can take over in that area and in
Exactly.
restaurants, and that's where the future is for our youth and education.
Right.
So
Yep.
between apprenticeships, workforce, or I mean, work experience, internships,
Right.
those are the areas I feel that really need to be developed even more in order to get our youth interested in these careers.
100%. And I should mention that this isn't just like ideas that I have. I've been working in this intersection of education and workforce for the last 20 years. My job at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was a team of us were working on trying to help colleges and universities become more innovative and have more of these short programs that led to credentials, helping to improve graduation rates for lower income populations and underserved minorities. And then a number of companies that I've invested in personally, like Credly comes to mind. Credly is a company that actually provides the infrastructure for a lot of these certifications, and they've now helped certify more than 40 million Americans. They were recently acquired by a publicly traded company. At this point, it might even be more than 40 million because that's where they were just a year ago. And so this is kind of the area that I've been investing in, working with entrepreneurs for the last 20 years. It's not just an area that I am interested in.
Right. Well, I have a lot of friends in higher ed. I worked at UNLV for a while, and I have
Yeah,
still friends there. And one of the things that they're working on is exactly that: is the credentialing. How do we
yeah,
combine and how do we work together? But unfortunately, a lot of institutions work in silos. So the right hand doesn't always know what the left hand is doing. And then once you get them all in a room and they're all like, oh my God, we're all working together, that's when that collaborative effort it's like a puzzle. It all comes
yeah.
together and everybody knows, okay, this is where we're going to go. You're going to do X, Y, and Z. I have to say that CSN, our College of Southern Nevada, I'm also a graduate of there, have done a great job on doing these short term for nursing, medical assistants, because that's another field.
Another big one. Yep, yep.
And we have our medical school and our dental school. So Las Vegas has really grown, and we are really looking into the future and looking at how to best serve our young students for the future. So
Completely. I went to a UNLV fair, actually a student fair, 2 weeks ago, and talked to a number of students who had built up a cybersecurity club. There were also others related to kind of medical technologies that students were working on, and students are already kind of building this on their own. And in a number, one of the things we have to do to give them more money, though, is right now federal financial aid only allows you to get Pell Grants and student loans to attend these degree programs, which could be 2 years or 4 years in length. We need to modify that law, and I would work with Congress to do this, to allow you to actually use these dollars towards these credentialing programs that have proven labor market outcomes, where you can actually get that $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 a year job. And that we're overdue for that reform, actually. That's a reform I've been advocating for since my time at the Gates Foundation about 7 years ago.
another thing too is we were lucky enough while I was working with state is that we had 5,000 scholarships for Grow with Google.
Yep.
And I was amazed because even when it was free, trying to get these people to sign up because it's all online.
Yeah.
So, for when I call dislocated worker, it could be anyone between 36 and say 50. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
They lost their jobs during COVID and now they have to get retrained. So the other thing I see is that we need to bring up more of our, like I said, 40 to 60-year-olds more into the computer age,
Mhm.
you
Yep.
know? Uh,
Yep.
Again, I always tell people I was lucky that I was in the workforce when computers came around and the Google and all of, actually it was America Online, AOL back in the day. But I'm savvy enough that I can handle stuff, but there's so many other people that don't. So Grow with Google is an excellent opportunity to put people in front and say, you can do this.
Totally. And there's some of the research that we did at the Gates Foundation shows that there's some people, and it's only about 10% of people who can take the whole course on their own, self-directed, don't need any assistance. But 90% of people do need like the structure of an online session that you go to with a professor or a study group or a tutor or a mentor. And so that's the other reason why we need to provide federal funding to this is the free programs are great and Grow with Google actually is great.
Mm-hmm.
But the stats are close to 90% of people don't finish those programs because they don't have that structure, that encouragement, that group, the cohort that they're with. And so we need to provide that funding so that colleges can partner with, and this already has happened with, I believe, 50 colleges the last time I talked to Google. But Google is funding it as a charitable initiative. This should be more like a federal initiative where we're actually providing funding to the students and the schools to make sure that they get the support around doing these programs. Then it would be a much higher graduation rate.
Wow. I love your ideas. I do. We think a lot alike. Now, like I said, I'm not going to touch on the war or immigration because those are things that right at this time, even if you could talk about them, you wouldn't because,
Oh, I would talk about them. I don't mind talking about hot button issues like that.
well, let's talk about immigration.
Yeah.
When I arrived in 1967, we were considered political prisoners, or not political prison, political refugees.
Refugees.
That's how we were
Yeah.
described. We left our country because Fidel Castro, obviously, we had no rights. Now, the border is out of control. I mean, you see the people in the water, you see those barbed wires, and I understand. As a mother, I couldn't see myself crossing any river like that with my kid. But then again, my mom took a plane. She would have never gotten on a boat. We left
Right.
in the last freedom flight in 1967.
Hmm.
But these people are coming out of countries that, like Haiti, I mean, the gang warfare they're just awful. So they're coming to America for a better chance. But how do you see that border getting fixed or I don't know the word to use.
No, no, fixed is the right word. I do think it's a dereliction of duty that we haven't done the right thing at the border. And I say this as somebody who loves immigrants, thinks immigrants make our country stronger, but we also have to be realistic that 1 billion people want to come to America. And right now, we don't have a system that helps figure out who are the right people who should come and have them come in an orderly way. And people are taking huge risks with their lives to come across those river crossings. So there are multiple things we need to do. And I have a 10-page white paper I'm getting very close to releasing that I'll share a few things from it right now. the first thing that we need to do is not just surge more border agents. That always comes up as the first thing. It's almost like a knee-jerk thing that all the politicians want to say. But the number one thing we need to do, even more important than that, is to surge more border judges so that we can actually adjudicate people's claims and figure out who is a true refugee and asylee, who's coming from a country where their life is threatened, and then who's just coming here for economic reasons. And the people who are coming here for economic reasons, we should tell them, you need to go back to your home country, and we're actually going to set up a processing center there, and you can apply for a work permit. So you can work in America for 1 year or 2 years. You'll need to explain exactly what your skills are. Maybe you'll actually have a skill to work in the farms. Maybe you'll have skill to be a doctor or a nurse. And we need to create this Department of Talent. We would actually move the immigration function into the Department of Talent that I was talking about before. And there would be a point system like Australia or Canada where you get a certain number of points. And if we have job openings for you, we will let you in with that work permit for 1 year, 2 years. And if you actually are someone with a PhD or needed in a really important profession where we don't have enough workers right now, like doctors and nurses, we have shortages. We also have shortages in certain technology fields. We would let you in and even put you on a green card path where it's faster for you to become a citizen than otherwise. But there are solutions to these things. And right now, the politicians are intentionally not solving them as opposed to solving them. And I could talk to you more about other aspects of my plan, which I'll quickly rattle off, which is that we need to have a clear 3-year path for dreamers to become citizens here in the United States. There's 75–80% support for that. That should be an easy bipartisan program to pass. And then finally, on the guest worker program, like if someone comes here for 1 or 2 years, and they actually pay taxes, that should give you additional points that you actually have come here, been a good citizen, you followed the process. But if you come across the border illegally, you get demerits, you get negative points on that. And if we had a system like that of points where people know they would get positive points for following this path and registering in their home country and negative points for coming across the border, and you have less and less chance of becoming a citizen, people learn these systems when you have them.
I like that because if we keep it all online or in a database, then when Joe decides to cross the border again, no, Joe, you came 3 months ago and we kicked you out. You're out again. And
that's
put
right.
him in.
Then you get another negative 10 points. Like you're starting now even further from the back of the line. But right now, what we're doing is kind of the worst of all worlds, is that we're, 300,000 people are crossing the border, and then we let 270,000 of them just kind of like end up randomly in America without actually being databased and without figuring out what their skills are and what jobs they can do. And it's the worst of all worlds, actually.
I know that when I came in 1967, Miami was ready for the influx of Cubans. Of course, the first ones that left the island were all the professionals, all the rich business people, and then little by little it flew into my mom's.
Starting in 1959, yeah.
Exactly. So, but when we arrived, the Red Cross, and I remember this like it was yesterday, and I was 5 years old, but we arrived and there was the Red Cross. Right away, it was the passport, all the paperwork, blah, 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 the shots and all this. Then do you have someone that lives here that can pick you up? Yes, we do. My aunt, that God bless her, she's still alive. Tia Adela. Yeah, she's still alive. She picked us up. Then it was, okay, now you have 3 months to find permanent living. So we got an apartment. That's how we ended up in Liberty City, because that's where they were saying, hey, come here,
like
it's cheap.
American city, yeah,
exactly. So my mom rents an apartment, got a job right away in a dry cleaner, signed me up to school, Comstock Elementary, right there on 28th Street and 17th Avenue. That's how I remember, Miami, Florida. And every Friday, she'd pick me up from school. We had to get 2 buses to get to La Casa de la Libertad, the House of Liberty, to report that she got paid, she was working, and here's the record from my school that I've been attending school. And that happened for 3 years until we were able to apply for residency, our green card. And then I became an American citizen right after high school in 1979.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
The process was much more organized back then, which is crazy considering how many technological advancements we have now, where you
Exactly.
have to like go to an office to report your income or that you had a job. Like this could be automated at this point. And so a whole pillar of my campaign is about the new collar jobs I was talking about before,
Hmm.
and kind of reorganizing the Department of Education and Labor together to the Department of Talent. A third pillar is about modernizing government. All of the functions of government have been, we've allowed them to atrophy. They've gotten completely bureaucratic and almost non-functional at this point. And we need to work on upgrading them to modern technologies, even basic things like hiring. Right now, it is almost impossible to hire new people into the government. We need to set up, it's almost like a guest worker program, but for working into the government, where people could come for 1 to 3 years on a fellowship to work in different departments of the government, to bring in that technological expertise, to start encouraging the honor in public service again. Right now, people think, oh, you only go work for the government if you're going to work there your whole life. We need to make it possible for these fellowships to exist and to infuse the whole government with young people, technologically literate people, people who are willing to say, why is this bureaucratic process here? There's a faster way to do it. Let me show you.
I totally agree with you on that because, I mean, to the entire world, we're not looking like fools. And I've always been proud to be an American. I've always said that regardless how you criticize, people say this and that about us, blah, 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 we're overeat, we do this, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, where does everybody want to come?
They want to come to America. We're
Thank
still
you.
the shining city on a hill that
Thank you.
billion people want to come to, even in our
Worst
somewhat
of,
broken down, needing an upgrade. That's why in all my campaign videos, I usually start them out by saying, America needs an upgrade. We still are the best version 1.0, but at this point, 270 some years in, we need an upgrade to our systems.
and not only that, we need to get the young people interested in government
Yeah.
because as my generation retires, there's not too many behind me that went up, oh, no,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's
And
why I want to do a program where it's like a 1 to 3 year fellowship. Like things like Teach for America or Venture for America have proven that a lot of young people would do like 1 to 3 year fellowships in the federal government. There still is sort of a like I would love to work in public policy and change the world for the better. So many young people have this attitude, but they just don't want to work for the government for 30 years or their whole life. They want to do like a 2 year program. And I do think we would have a lot of applications for that program under my administration. It's going to make public service honorable again.
I like that. I like that because that's the one thing that I mentored a lot of kids during my 27 years in state service. And I used to tell them if you don't know what you want, graduate from high school, apply for a state job, look for or whatever government, city, local, or state. Once you start looking around, there are so many opportunities in government. Everybody thinks it's just the people answering the phone or the people at DMV, but
Yeah.
there's so many available employment and opportunities that you can build into a future.
Right. Well, but these jobs are not advertised on Indeed. They are not advertised on college bulletin boards and college organizations that are actually providing this in an online format. And for some reason, the name of the company that's the biggest company in this space is eluding me right now. But that's where those jobs should be advertised. And it goes beyond just government. So part of my program is that we need to take AmeriCorps, which was a great idea back in the 90s when Bill Clinton and his administration created it. And we need to upgrade that too. We probably need to 10x that, in fact, because there are all these entrepreneurial organizations, mostly nonprofits, but some B corporations and for-profits that are working to improve homelessness, to help people find affordable housing, to help people, like we were talking about earlier, with the people in their 20s that are learning English as a second language, or 30s or 40s, like they're trying to better themselves. Most of these nonprofits are kind of struggling away to get donations every year and to find employees. And if we upgraded AmeriCorps and we invited all these organizations to be part of AmeriCorps, then we could actually have more and more people doing these 2 year tours of duty with these nonprofits and NGOs that are helping to improve our society too.
Wow. That I like that. I really like all your ideas. We think along the same wave.
Thank you. I think it's people that work in education just kind of have this idea like it's all about kind of like helping human flourishing, helping people find their God-given talent and achieve their most purposeful life in the world. And that's
Educators are special. They really are.
we
It's a
are. And I feel like I'm an educator adjacent in a way because I've
mhm,
been investing in educators
for
my
so
whole
many
life.
years.
My dad and my sister were teachers. This is the best I can do. I can't be an educator. I can just help educators get more funding and more respect.
Support the process.
Exactly.
Now, I have one question for you that is one of my is inflation. My
Yeah.
gosh. I went to the grocery store Saturday. It was just a week after, and it was 25 more dollars for the same items that I have been buying, and they keep going up every week. What is going on with that? I mean, COVID is over. Um, Logistics and transportation is supposed to be, going on pretty good.
Right.
These major companies are making a killing. Why
Yeah.
can't they pass something, some savings along to the consumer?
Yeah, well, this is a multi-threaded problem. And I kind of was shocked that the Biden administration didn't do more. I mean, they did have the Inflation Reduction Act that they
Hmm.
passed, but as you probably know, that was mostly kind of a climate change bill. It really wasn't about, and I'm in favor of doing things to address climate change. In fact, very in favor. But what Biden could have done is there's an 18.9 cent tax on gasoline, and that tax, we could have had a temporary moratorium on that tax and that would have reduced the price of gasoline by 18.9 cents around the country. In terms of groceries, like when they come out with the inflation numbers, like right now, the inflation is supposedly down to 3% right now, but that's based on everybody instead of based on like an average family that's getting an income of 50 or $60,000. They spend a lot more of their money on rent. They spend a lot more of their money on food,
Yes.
the basic necessities. And so that metric needs to be updated to more match like the middle class life experience, as opposed to right now, it uses the whole economy and it includes, lots of billionaires and millionaires who are spending like 1% of their income on food. And it includes things like, expensive private planes and stuff that should not be part of that at all.
Right, right. Yeah, when they say inflation went down, I'm like, where did it go down?
It didn't go
It
down. It
didn't.
didn't go down. It's still 3% right now. And if you add that to the 9% last year and the 6% the year before, like it's gone up about 20% in the last 3 years. And that's why people don't believe, they can't believe their lying eyes or whatever the phrase is
Yeah.
there, because they're paying more at the pump and they're paying more for their groceries and they're paying a lot more for their rent. That's probably where it's gone up the most.
So what do you see, or how do you see fixing that? Or I
Yeah.
keep using the word fix because
No, it's
I feel
right.
like
That's
we're
so I'm
broken.
a solutions oriented person. I'm glad you asked that. And so I want to address first the housing problem. And so what I would have done and still could do is implement temporarily for 1 or 2 years, rent can only go up by 3% per year. We need to keep the rent in check. That would be the number one thing. The other thing we could do is it's very expensive for people to pay first month, last month, and deposit. That's where a lot of people are not able to afford housing in the first place. And so what we could do is actually create what I call a deposit fund, where instead of paying the full deposit, you could just pay 10% of the deposit. And this will be like an insurance program where everybody pays in 10% and it'll cover all of the deposits out there. And you won't get your money back at the end. It's like more like an insurance program, but you don't have to pay the full amount. And that would reduce the amount you have to pay to get into a house in the first place.
Wow. I had never thought of that. That's a pretty good idea.
I think the government could make some money on that because I think that less than 10% of people are going to default on this if we set up the program properly.
Exactly, because they never get the money back. So actually, what it is they're giving the money to the landlord to get this person Odie in housing. If
That's
Odie
right.
doesn't pay her rent, she's still going to get evicted.
Right.
But does that money then go back to that account? That's
That
how
would go that in that case, that would be like the one default, and then the landlord would get paid the deposit that they would have
that
got
would have
otherwise.
had otherwise. Okay, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. So how about
Yeah.
the gasoline? So you think that you can go in
You
there
could
and
take the tax down by 18.9 cents. And in
wow.
fact, some governors in some states were smart enough to do this. So I'm really just copying their policy. In fact, Maryland, where I live, the governor here actually did temporarily take away the state tax, or he cut it in half. I can't recall the exact detail. And that actually helped mitigate it here.
Okay, that sounds
The other
pretty.
thing that could be done is we have all these tariffs right now on especially a lot of foods that are coming into the country from other countries. I would immediately reduce those tariffs to zero when they're, things for like fruits and vegetables and things that are in the supermarket. That's where the prices are going up a lot because of those tariffs.
Wow, I'm looking forward to seeing your white paper
Now, the white paper is on immigration.
on immigration on that
On
one, but I'm
immigration.
sure you'll be
I
writing
don't have
lots.
one on inflation yet, although, this is an important one to very important to
Yeah,
people.
to start talking about. Well, Mr. Palmer, if you don't mind, I like to call you Jason.
Yeah, you can call me
Okay,
Jason.
Jason, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast and giving us a little bit about what your thoughts are, what your vision is, and what you're looking for. So, again, next time you're in Las Vegas, please come and visit us. We'd be more than happy to have you again.
I would love to visit you, especially at a minimum, so that I can see the full painting on the wall behind you, which has really been captivating me for this entire interview, because I
This
can kind of mostly see it. Hey, I love it.
Yeah,
It's a
that
big
was
ocean.
my nephew George. He's the engineer and the producer of the show, and he actually came up with the logo. And like we were talking before, the Big O Show. It's kind of ironic because I'm the shortest one in the family, but I carry the title. So,
There you go.
all
Alrighty,
right,
this has
sir.
been great. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so
I
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.